Hey, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy our cup of coffee. Today's guest is Marcey Rader, and she's all about productivity, and she's got an amazing book out right now. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that, but how it applies in our day-to-day business. And man, she's just full of energy, full of life, and great information and insights for you. Before we jump into the conversation with her, though, I wanted to give a shout out to one of our listeners, Caesar. He is reached out to us through email. Just sent us an email, chad@locdoc.net. And he said, was pretty exciting for me. He said, your episode with Sam Gray recently about the 4 disciplines of execution was killer. It led me to start a book club with my colleagues, and we're going to start implementing 4DX in our goals for 2021. That's exciting. People that are taking the concepts, the business ideas, practices, and strategies and actually implementing them, that are very exciting to hear about. So if things that we share on the podcast are something that work for you and ways that you're implementing them, please don't hesitate to reach out and share an email with us. We definitely appreciate it. It's chad@locdoc.net. But in the meantime, let's jump to another great episode where we have a wonderful conversation with Marcey about productivity. So grab your cup of coffee and get ready for this conversation.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
Well, Marcey, thank you very much for being here today.
My pleasure.
And as I said when you first jumped on, we're going to give you major points for the best remote video for most any of the guests that we've had. It looks amazing, great set, and obviously this is something that you're very well primed for, which we'll be talking about in just a little bit. But let's jump into it. Before we get too far, rapid fire, 5 randomly selected questions just to get to know you a little better with unknown point values. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Number 1, what do you pretend to hate but you actually love?
Oh. I don't have an answer.
There's nothing that you just absolutely hate, but you tell people that you like it? Or vice versa, I guess that would be.
No, because I'm pretty direct.
One person said that they pretend to hate working out, but they actually enjoy it. But they tell everybody.
I love to work out.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, I really can't. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's very disappointing for the first question.
This is why it's rapid fire, though, because it's very unprepared, right?
Yeah.
All right. So you don't pretend that you hate anything because you just tell people the truth. See, that's a really good answer.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. Number 2, what gets you excited about life?
Oh, what gets me excited about life? Well, I'll tell you what gets me excited now, and that's a vaccine. So right now, a vaccine is getting me excited about life, and I'm hopeful for hugs by July.
Hopeful for hugs by July. There you go. I think that's a great quote. Number 3, what is your number 1 goal for the next 6 months?
Hiring. I have my company grew 38% last year.
Very cool.
And so I need to hire another productivity specialist.
All right. That sounds exciting. Hugs for, all right. Hiring. Very cool. Number 4, what have you read either online or just read recently that has inspired you?
I just put out a post about my top 20 books for 2020. I read 38. And one of the best books I read was called Breath by, his last name is Nestor. Fascinating. I actually listened to it twice.
Wow.
And there were just so many things in there that we don't know about. And also there are so many medical conditions that can be cured with proper breathing. And it's a fascinating book. Fascinating. So I've been spouting the joys of breathing and that book for the last month.
All right. I guess I should start paying attention to my watch whenever it tells me that I need to stop and breathe then.
Oh, yes. The thing that people just, ignore. Yeah.
Gotta get this out of here. All right. Number 5, last question. What is something that you got rid of that you wish you hadn't?
I probably so many things because I am a big declutterer and I just get rid of things all the time. But I'm also not that attached to things. So I'm going to say my combat boots from high school. My first big purchase for clothing was a pair of $120 combat boots.
Yeah.
Doc Martens.
Doc Martens, yeah.
Yeah. Which were huge back in, 1992.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have kept those.
Well, I'm sure they sell them again. You can, Doc Martens
Yeah, but it wouldn't be, actually, the company was bought out after that.
Oh.
They were no longer a London-based company. So it did change after that. It's not the same.
The Doc Martens, and the good thing about them is they last forever. They're virtually indestructible.
I know. I don't know why I got rid of them.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you very much. You passed rapid fire. We're going to give you a score of 712. So congratulations there.
Okay. And if I think of something that I pretend not to like, or pretend to like during this hour, it's working in the back of my mind, then I'll let you know.
Okay. Well, if that, then maybe we'll give you a few more bonus points. All right. Okay. So we recently had a couple of guests. We apparently have a few common connections through Vistage and other areas. But I was speaking with Josh recently, and he said, "Hey, you got to talk to Marcey." And so he connected us up together. You have a book out, which we'll be talking about a little bit. So I've been on a crash course of going through that book over the last couple of days, trying to get through it. And you bring up a lot of valid points. And I think it's very practical, especially in the first part of a year, right? As a reset, just trying to kind of get yourself organized together, and you really hit on a couple of key points. So you have a book. Tell us the title and tell us really what the book is focused on, because you kind of cover three main categories. Sure.
It's Work Well, Play More. Productive, clutter-free, healthy living, one step at a time.
All right.
And it is 12 months of behavior change divided up into a productivity behavior, a clutter behavior, which I include digital and physical, and a health behavior. And each of those months, each of those behaviors are divided into levels of novice, pro, and master. So the way the book is written is not to just read it and go through all the behaviors at once. You can, do all the novice. You can then the next year do all the pro, or you can skip around. Maybe you're novice in this, but you're pro in this, you're a master at this. You can totally skip it.
Yep.
One thing you said before we started was, I can't relate to decluttering my makeup bag, but there might be something else that you keep around, like, 4 different kinds of beard oil or something that you're just hanging on to. So there are, a lot of books written about, these in these areas. They're either very generic, which I made mine very specific in some ways with like action steps, like this is what you do, or they're written to the middle level, and the people that are more novice, it's too challenging for them and they just put the book away.
Yep.
Or they're written at too high, or they're written at too low of a level, and somebody that's already experienced is just like in 2 chapters in, and they're like, I don't need this.
Yep. No, I think it's very true. And a couple of ways that you've broken down the book in the 12 months thing is very helpful, because you can break it down, digest it a little easier. And I think that's very true. It's, a lot of books are very high level, ambiguous, suggestive things that you're like, how do I exactly apply that? And then some are so basic that it's like, all right, let's get to the point.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a valid point. What was it like writing a book? Is this your only book that you've written? You got more?
This is my third
book. Okay. So what are your other books about?
The first one is called Hack the Mobile Lifestyle, 6 Steps to Work Well and Play More.
Okay.
And that focused on nutrition, exercise, hotel, air, car travel. When I first started my business, I focused on business travelers 7 years ago, because I used to travel 48 weeks a year.
Yeah.
For about a decade. So it was all focused on business travel. And then the second book was an upgrade to that called Beyond Travel, a Road Warrior Survival Guide. Travel is just a very narrow vertical for me now. But the 3 books, the way I would describe them is, the first book and I describe them this way because my husband is a professional musician.
Okay.
The first book was like recording in my parents' basement. My second book was like recording in a real studio, but my third book was like going to Nashville.
Yeah.
Like going to LA, and really like I knew what I was doing. I had a whole team. I don't even want anybody to buy my first book. My second book is good, but now with COVID, a lot of it's out, some of it's outdated.
Yeah.
But this book, I just relaunched it in November, with some updates. Like tech updates and things like that. And I'm really proud of it. It's one of the things I'm most proud of in the 7 years I've been in business.
So what was it like? What is the process like for you for writing a book? I mean, I'm a big fan of reading, either business development books, business strategy books, biographies, whatever, just kind of understanding how to be a better individual. And so I've just often kind of contemplated that process like, man, that is an undertaking, one, and then it's very vulnerable, right? Because you're just putting a lot of yourself out there. What is that process like for you?
The vulnerability is for sure a real thing, because in the first part of the book, in introduction, I do talk about a lot of mistakes that I made. Mm-hmm. And for the first maybe 3 or 4 years of my business, I didn't want anybody to know that I triggered 3 autoimmune diseases with the lifestyle that I lived. I didn't want people to know I wasn't perfect, And so there's that vulnerability, but also I talk about how I grew up. Mm-hmm. We didn't eat vegetables. Sugar was a food group. And my mom does not like that. She doesn't like it, but it's my story, and it's a lot of people's story. And if she wants to tell a story, she can write her book. Yeah. But, so I really had to think about, how I could present my story without hurting feelings, mm-hmm. but also being really true. And I was really true to myself, because what I found out is everybody's like, everybody's like me in some way. As far as having things in their past that they don't necessarily want people to know about. From a process perspective, what I ended up doing was I got 100 stickies, and I wrote all the concepts down on, one concept per sticky. Mm-hmm. And then for a week, I had them out on my back porch on a table, and I would just move the stickies around until they made sense from a flow perspective, right. Because it's the 12 months and everything. And, I'd get rid of stickies or I'd add stickies. And then that became my book. And for each of them, I have gone away somewhere during the bulk of the writing and written for 2 or 3 days. And then also I live near a state park, Umstead State Park, and I would go there and write for 2 or 3 hours, because even with the hotspot, the Wi-Fi is terrible. Mm-hmm. And so I couldn't get distracted. And if I'm driving all the way there and I'm setting up my laptop on a picnic table, I'm not going to jack around.
Gotcha.
Yep.
No, it's very interesting. The process just always has clicked with me. And I've seen some other authors kind of that same type of process before, where and maybe it's just me as a misnomer that you think, well, somebody's going to write a book, so they just sit down and they're just typing nonstop or writing nonstop for weeks or months, and then boom, here's this book. But the idea of kind of laying out concepts, from a visual standpoint, it works really good for my mind, because that is an easy way. I try to take these things down into practical application for business operators. Okay, so we've got to figure out how to improve this process in our business. Well, you could apply that same thing. Just get all these ideas out on sticky notes and start to figure it out.
And I do that that's actually something that I do with businesses. It's so much easier if you're writing all the steps on on sticky notes, mm-hmm. and you can just move them around. Mm-hmm. The processes that you're doing, and you can do that. I do that with presentations. Yeah. Anytime I'm creating a new presentation, I'm putting all the concepts that I want on the presentation on stickies or virtual stickies, like the sticky notes online, and then I'm just moving things around.
Very cool. All right. So in the book, you talk a lot about putting this information down on a whiteboard. So and kind of getting the task out in the open. So kind of tagging onto that same type of concept. I think a lot of, and I know I'm going to just speak for me personally, struggle with that connecting the digital thing, right? Trying to keep it all so you can have access to it, but then you have so much information in there that you can find when you need to go look for it. But there is something around having it out, having it visible, and having it on the wall as an action item to do. Why is that the case? Why is it that if it gets tucked into the digital atmosphere that sometimes, and I know you're a big proponent of Evernote, but I mean, I have Evernote, thousands and thousands of notes. But it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
What's the difference? Why is it important to put it on a whiteboard?
Chad, I'm going to show you something right now.
Okay. All right. Practical example right here, live. Uh-oh.
I'm living it right here. So I am all digital. I love digital. I love it. But this is staring at me all day long.
Yep. Look at that. There's I asked you what your goal was for the next 6 months, and it's right there. Hire somebody.
It is. Yes, exactly. So I have my quarterly priorities, monthly priorities, weekly priorities, and then every day I do my top 3 tasks, which I've already done today. And then these are my themes, which if you're far enough along in my book, you understand. But these are staring at me, or I'm staring at it all day. Mm-hmm. And so every time I'm done with a task or something, then I'm looking at it like, okay, what did I say was my priority when I'm not in the moment? Mm-hmm. Because when we're in the moment, we're just going to pick the low-hanging fruit or the easy thing or what we want to do instead of what maybe is really our priority. So I do believe in having something that you can look at physically all the time.
It's interesting from the perspective that, in life and business especially, it depends on, how you're working. If you're working from home or, if you're in an office and you get the distractions that happen, having a central place to bounce back to. So, the whirlwind happened. I'm here. Okay, what happened? Now I can have a place I can sit down and go, oh, yeah, these are the things that I'm supposed to do. I've already committed to these things happening today to stay on track. I appreciate the fact, even in the book, how it talks so much to that. All right, yes, I have said I'm going to do this, but am I actually going to take action on it? I can hope that I can do something, but am I actually going to take action on it? Can you copy this key? That's a question we get asked about 3,422 times a year. And how can you actually be sure that the person who asked that question is supposed to get a copy of that key? Well, we think you should always know who can copy your keys to your business and your home, because it could be your neighbor, an old employee, a contractor, or even worse, your mother-in-law. At Loc-Doc Security, we believe in protected key systems, so you always know who has a copy of your key. To find out more, visit locdoc.net or stop by our Charlotte location. Loc-Doc Security, helping you protect your people and your property.
Exactly. And I will say that this, in a physical office environment, it's also great to have this whiteboard for your staff, for your team, for your boss to know what all your priorities are. But you can even do it in a virtual environment. We use Asana for our project management system, soon to use ClickUp, but that's not important. But we have these priorities everybody knows everybody's priorities from a quarterly, monthly, and weekly perspective. And we have this as a recurring task every day so that people can see that. I know exactly what Ray is working on in her priority. Lisa knows what my priority is. And so you can have these virtual whiteboards as well so that the whole team knows what's going on.
I'm taking notes here because when I have these conversations with people, it gets me excited. We have a leadership stand-up meeting every morning at 9 a.m. in our organization, half virtual, half in person, right? And it's a 15-minute. There's 7 or 8 people involved. 15 minutes. It's high pace. Thing is, what is your number one priority for today? What is the thing that you're accomplishing this day so that everybody can be on board?
That's great.
What we don't do is have it visual. And so I just writing a note here. I want to interject a whiteboard type thing in there so we can write it down. And then because we come to the same place every day, it's a reminder. That was my priority yesterday. Have I made traction on it? I like that.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that you talked about, obviously vulnerability. In the book, you open up and you go, hey, this was the way that health happened in my world early on. And it's something I was sitting there going, well, it's pretty much the same way. Like our family's health was not a priority. It was eat to survive, not necessarily eat for health. And I think life has changed.
Or eat for convenience was ours.
Okay, eat for convenience. And I've heard people talk about that before. I know there's somebody that I know that they grew up and their family had the same meal every day of the week, right? So every Monday we have this, every Tuesday we have this, and it was just the convenience side.
Yeah.
But changing that over and being intentional about your health and then the other implications that it has through the rest of your work or the rest of your life is something that is obviously becoming more and more of an awareness right now. But the other big thing that I think that you really hit on a lot in the book is processes to create boundaries. Why is that important?
Well, I typically don't use the term time management.
Mm-hmm.
I will use it because people will understand what I'm talking about, but mostly it's time boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Because, when we're not managing our time, it's because we're loosening our boundaries. And so, first, and I would say boundaries are the thing that I work with people the most with private coaching.
Mm-hmm.
But, thinking about, what do I want my boundaries to be? With my phone, with my communication, with my email, with my sugar intake, with different things. We tend to let other people just kind of control our agenda and our time, or let devices control our agenda or our time. And to some extent, if you're an entry level person or you're reporting, 4 levels below, of course there are some things that you can't control, but what can you?
Yeah.
And have you put the proper boundaries on those? For me, I don't send emails on the weekends, and because I don't want to steal your weekend, and I don't want you to reply to mine. Mm-hmm. So if I work, I'm scheduling it to go out later. Mm-hmm. One of a friend of mine, she jokes that like 4 years ago when she was first introduced to me, I was the first person. This was back when you would do a lot of coffees. Pre-COVID, when you have coffee meetings, I was the first person in the, hey, we should meet for coffee, that said, I never meet in person first. I always have a phone call to make sure that it's worth our time.
Gotcha.
To meet together face to face. Because if you will find it, you will know within 7 to 10 minutes if your relationship's going to go somewhere. But if you have driven to the Starbucks and you have spent $4 on a latte, you will sit there for 45 minutes or longer, because it would be rude to leave in 10 minutes. But if you're on a phone, maybe 20 minutes or, something at the most, but it's much easier to say, yeah, this is working. Let's meet face to face. So, creating those types of boundaries before you're in the moment can really help open up that space.
All right. So another thing you talk about on meetings. So I'm just noting here, if I ever have a quick phone call with Marcey, it's because she doesn't want to hang out with me. All right. You also talk about walking meetings. I was first kind of aware of this through the Steve Jobs biography. He was famous for taking walks around the Apple campus for having meetings for multiple reasons. One, it established a time limit. So we're going to take one lap and we're done. But two, it broke it opened up some brainstorming because you're out and you're kind of in motion. Mm-hmm. You mention it in your book as well for similar reasons. Why is that? Why should people take that into account when they're talking about having a meeting rather than just sitting across from the desk from if you're doing one-on-ones? Why not just sit across the desk versus get out and walk?
Yes. Well, for one-on-ones especially, when you're sitting across the table from someone, there is a real or perceived level of hierarchy. Mm-hmm. And so walking side by side, you lose that hierarchy, which some people may say, I want hierarchy, but you will be more open and honest walking side by side. Also, when you're moving both sides of your body, after about 15 minutes, the neurons between the hemispheres of your brain start to connect, and that leads to creativity and collaboration. My favorite I call them walkie-talkies. My favorite walkie-talkie story was I was working with a biotech company in Boston, and I was private coaching the director of contracts and finance. Mm-hmm. And they had somebody who made $1 million mistake. Yeah. Like literally. And this woman thought she was going to be fired, because she made this $1 million mistake. She felt sick about it. And I happened to be coaching the director that day. Mm-hmm. And I made the comment like, you might want to think twice about firing her because she'll never make that mistake again. Yeah. Because it wasn't malicious. And I said, do this as a walking meeting. So she did that, and she said it was super successful. The woman ended up not being fired, super successful, but because it got her out of her environment, mm-hmm. She was in nature. Because she was walking, and she had a lot of adrenaline going because she was nervous and anxious, I'm going to get fired. So it was able to bring down the adrenaline, and she didn't have to look at her boss. So she was more open and honest. But also, her boss is very tall. She's a very tall woman. Mm-hmm. And, if you're sitting, and I'm fun size, I'm only 5'2". And so, when I am dealing with somebody that's much taller than I am, I can't help but feel that hierarchy. Mm-hmm. So thinking about things like that. And if you can't do it face to face, then you can, one-on-ones are great for phone walkie-talkies. And I do that all the time. And actually with the coffee shop one-to-ones, I typically will do those as walkie-talkies outside. I'll say, we've had enough caffeine. I know this is a coffee break podcast, but at some point you have to stop in the day. And that's when you move to walkie-talkies and you can meet people and do that.
Yeah. I've also found too that it gives you a limit. So yes. Around our business park here, it's like 4 laps we can do in a half an hour. So my one-on-ones are half an hour. So when the weather's okay-ish, and today it's in the high 30s, so it was a bit crisp on our walk earlier. But having that, it gives you the time. It's 4 laps and kind of we're done. But I had a meeting earlier this week when it was raining out. And there was an inside meeting, and it went for an hour when it was supposed to be 30 minutes. So there's just some of the, especially when you talk about time boundaries, if you're not careful, it can lead to extending out those conversations. So that's very, very intriguing. The other thing that you talk about from a time management perspective is it's some of the things that when you actually think about them, like, man, why haven't I been doing this for years? You're talking about minimizing your wardrobe or creating, tell me the term that you were using, but basically having your wardrobe ready so that it's a quick selection in the morning rather than having to go through that paralysis of what do I need to wear?
Yeah. So people will food prep, on Sundays. Mm-hmm. Why not outfit prep? And we don't have to do it so much now in COVID because we're really just changing our shirt. I mean, you could wear the same pants all day, all week long, and nobody would know. But I outfit prep every Sunday, and I even have clothespins with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it just makes it very easy for me to put all my outfits together and then pull them out of the closet. And I even take it a step further, and I have a stylist that 2-3 times a year, she'll come and put together outfits for me, mm-hmm. snap photos of them, and I have an outfit library. For me, as a professional speaker traveling around the country, that's really helpful. For people that are, I can just wear a blue shirt and pants, khaki pants every day, and it doesn't matter. That might seem, it's because it's master level. No. It's a level that you don't need, but it makes it so much simpler for me to just, I like to look good, but the closet is one thing that I will stand in front of in the morning and drool will come out of my mouth. And I'm just like, I don't even know what to wear today. And I don't want to waste those types of decisions mm-hmm. in the morning when I have more important things to think about.
Well, it was funny as I was going through the book, I was at that part this morning when I was getting getting ready and trying to select what I was going to put on today. And I was sitting there going, man, should I wear this blue shirt or this white shirt? And it was just this whole, and I was like, I got to turn this book off because it's getting on my nerves. But anyways, I think it's a very practical thing, right? If you can go through that process, then you're going to get it saves a lot of time. It saves a lot of energy. Just go ahead and have it ready to go. All right.
And really good if you have kids. If you have kids, that for them, have them pick out their clothes on Sunday. If you have them do it and put the little clothespins on it because they've done it, and then it makes it much easier in the morning.
Perfect. Makes perfect sense. All right. Last thing that I want to kind of jump onto is the section of your book that I've made it to, which is GSD is what you call it. I'm going to say get stuff done, but I see your coffee mug there. You talk.
I need emphasis, Chad.
I got that part of the book. It needed some grit. So you bring up some very valid points in this, and this goes back to the time boundaries set of things. When you need to get things done, being intentional about it, so talk us through that. There's some parameters that you say when it gets to the point I've got to get this done. How do you identify that, and what is a process that anybody that's listening or watching to this can say, all right, I can do that now?
Yeah. The challenge I feel most people have in the corporate world is that they're swallowed up with meetings and they are not allowing enough time to actually think and create and strategize and get the hard stuff done. Mm-hmm. We are trying to work and do those things in 15 to 30 minute increments. Mm-hmm. And to create and strategize, you're not even in that zone until you've been thinking about it for 15 or 30 minutes. And so blocking out ideally an entire day every week, or an entire morning every week, or an entire afternoon every week as your GSD time that you hold sacred. You do not let anything come over that. Or if you have to move it to a different day, that you don't shrink it down. And, that is your time. We don't give enough credit mm-hmm. to that white space time to actually think and create. And so, I created something called Focus 90, where people it sounds ridiculous, but it works. People sign on to Zoom. I host it once a week. And for 90 minutes, we write in the chat, I give a productivity tip, and then we write in the chat what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. And then silent, we're all on video. We're just working. 90 minutes up, we write what we got done, and then we finish. The reason why it works is because there's a level of accountability because you wrote in the chat what you have to do. Mm-hmm. And most people, they just, okay, I have an hour. Okay, I have 30 minutes. Okay, I have this. They're not really intentional about, I have an hour. Mm-hmm. These are the things I'm going to get done. I have this half day. This is what I'm going to focus on. We just kind of wing it every time block that mm-hmm. we have. And so that makes people be very intentional. And then also I've been told, I feel like you're looking at me, or like some things, it's like this weird, level of accountability, and people love it. And there are about twice a quarter, I'll even do a Focus 90 day mm-hmm. where we have 4 sessions. And people will, block out their calendar for the whole day, because sometimes.
Just a reminder, you're listening to the Coffee Break
We
podcast.
need it. Everybody
also,
needs
wanted to let
that.
you know that our team puts together a weekly blog post.
I like that idea. I heard you say that in the book, and I was like,
guaranteed to raise your IQ by 12
again,
points.
it's like, now that you think about it, it's like, man, that makes a lot of sense, because
back to the conversation.
Connecting up with people, and it's just for the fact of, like you just said, it feels like you're staring at me. I got to keep my head down and work. Otherwise, I can kind of drift off in my own thoughts. So just having that, I guess it's setting that intention, being focused and intentional with your time at that particular moment, and then just setting that aside. I have thought about it. One of the things that I struggle with in my personal time schedule is I do have a lot of meetings back to back to back, and I have one-on-one scheduled each day. And so by the time I kind of get through all my meetings, then I have the afternoon time. And at that point, it's like I'm kind of fatigued to a point of getting in that creative zone. So I thought that's one of the things I'm going to try to take action on. I'm not going to try to. I'm going to take action on. There's one day that I can move a one-on-one to another day and open up a gap of time to be able to focus on that type of work. So that's a big takeaway for me.
Good. I want to add on to that. This is something I just went over with a client yesterday. Over 60% of the population are morning people. Mm-hmm. There's like 15% are like considered wolves, really late night people. There's like 10 to 15% that are called dolphins, and they're like people that just don't sleep well at all. But most of the people are morning people. Mm-hmm. But yet, when are most of our meetings? In the morning, when it's our most productive time. But if we change those to the afternoon, when we're doing a meeting, if I was doing a one-to-one with you, I'm going to be engaged in the afternoon because it's just us. So, give people use your productive time to think and create and strategize, because a lot of times by the afternoon, you're just toast. And one conversation I had with a coach a few years ago, she said, "Oh, I'm a morning person. I start my coaching calls at 7:30. And I said, "I'm a morning person too. That's why I don't give it up."
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, and I'm trying to process it because I chose the mornings intentionally, like mid-morning, I guess, for the one-on-ones, because I wanted time to be able for everybody to get started and get their day moving. But I was selective of not being in the afternoon because I felt like the afternoon, if there was any action that needed to be taken outside of that, it would be deferred or forgotten about until the next, or maybe just forgot about total. So, but I think that there's probably ways to get around that by whiteboarding things to kind of keep those things connected and in motion. But that's something that I need to assess. Because I think that there's a lot of value to that. Are you getting the most creative work time done in the morning, or are we crushing that because we're having that meeting?
Yeah, and it's very role dependent and company dependent and person dependent. I mean,
Sure.
Blanket recommendations are just that. But one thing you said that was very important is that you wait until the mid-morning.
Yeah.
When I hear about like 8 a.m. meetings or 9 a.m. meetings where people, they don't even have time to, look at their calendar. Those are the ones I'm like, that's not the way you want to start your day.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Have a little breathing room at least to get things going. Okay, cool. Well, I've got several more notes, obviously, and I still have around half the book to finish up. So there'll be more things to come of that. But I think a couple of big takeaways for me: whiteboard, getting information out there visible, and not just relying totally on the digital side of things, because it can get out of sight, out of mind, and then forgotten about. Any other productivity things that you've said, hey, these are some real common issues that people run into that if you just tweak these few little things, maybe you're going to get some better productivity or just more confidence out of life?
Ohio, your email.
Ohio.
Only handle it once. If you can tell by the subject line, you can't do anything with that email right now, don't even open it. If I had an email actually I did have an email. The subject line says W9 needed. Right, like it was 2 minutes before this podcast started. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to open it because I'm not going to have time to then, give them the W9, all those things. And that's a very simple example, but people will open emails and reread them all the time. Mm-hmm. And just, it's a discipline. It is a discipline, because if you're used to, just opening and rereading emails all the time, then it will be challenging, but it will help your email productivity more than anything else.
Very cool. One of the things that you mentioned on the book, and I've already done it, is the badge notifications on your email. And I'm not going to tell you why specifically I did it, but I had a large number on mine, and it was just stress inducing. So I just turned it off, and it's like, man, I feel like I've done so much work already, and I only turned my badge notifications off.
Yeah, because you're going to be in your inbox anyway. How does seeing 5,002 help you?
Yeah. That's a low number. Very cool. So thank you very much for your time today. It's exciting. I applaud the fact, obviously, that you've written 3 books. That's so cool, and it's something that I think is very valuable to be vulnerable and transparent and share these ideas and concepts, and then help people to apply them into their life. So very cool. Thank you for joining us today. If people want to find out more about you, where they can get the book, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. MarceyRader.com, MarceyRader.com. Or for the book, it's workwellplaymore.com.
All right. And it's also available.
It's on Amazon.
Yeah, it's on Audible. You can listen to you read it. So very, very, very cool. Thank you for joining us today. And hopefully we'll get to chat with you soon in the future.
Thank you. On a walking meeting.
There you go. Take care. Marcey, thank you again for joining us today. It was an absolute blast chatting with you. You get extra bonus points for great video and great audio. She was joining us remotely from Raleigh, North Carolina. So thank you very much for joining us today. It is exciting, as always, to share these episodes with you. And we've got over 100 out there available for you to listen to and check out. So make sure you do that. Go to Loc-Doc.net/podcast. Make sure you subscribe. There's links to all the podcast platforms there for you, as well as they're available on YouTube and Facebook. But if you go to Loc-Doc.net/podcast, you can click right to all of the episodes right on YouTube. They're right available for you. Make sure you do that. Hit the subscribe button so you can get the latest episode every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on the Coffee Break Podcast.